Hello and welcome to the Heaven Bound Sunday School class at the First General Baptist Church in Truman. We're going to read some scripture from the 1 Peter chapter 2. Now we know Peter, he was one of the most prominent among the original 12 apostles. Some argue could be that he was the most prominent. He's named first in all the listings of the apostles in Matthew and in Mark and in Luke. And of course, his denials of Jesus and then his subsequent reinstatement are significant markers in his life and those around him. Now, Peter wrote both 1 Peter and 2 Peter, and he referenced the Old Testament in both letters, especially the book of Isaiah. Now, Peter wrote this to the Christians who lived in the northern part of Asia Minor. They were being persecuted for their faith, and like many others, Peter wrote the letter to try to encourage them. Now we'll read our scripture, and like I said, it's from the second chapter of 1 Peter, beginning with the first verse. It says, "Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in Scripture it says, 'See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame.' Now to you who believe, this stone is precious, but to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Now in the very first chapter of 1 Peter, Peter reminded his readers that Jesus' grace and resurrection gave them hope, and that's what they needed to look to. And now in chapter 2, Peter says they should not take part in certain behaviors. And in that very first verse, he talks about them. He says, "All malice must go. Having wrongful intentions or desires to do evil must be eliminated. Second, all deceit, cunning deceit for self-gain should be removed. Hypocrisy should no longer exist. Instead, Christians should humbly live the moral standards they believe and preach. Christians should not envy the qualities or possessions of others, but be content with what God has given them. Finally, Christians should refuse to slander others." And this verse indicates Peter's concern for solidarity within the congregation. Now, he went on to give the example of newborn babies. They need milk to nurture and to grow. And likewise, he says, newborn Christians need spiritual milk to grow in their faith. Now, as the cornerstone, Jesus is the foundation for the salvation of the church. The church as a whole and the church members that make it up are measured and aligned by justice and righteousness. Jesus is our example of holiness that we are to model. In addition, just as the cornerstone guides the masonry of buildings, Jesus guides us as long as we believe and allow him to do so. We become living stones in his spiritual house. This living stone, Jesus, was rejected by the very religious men who claim to be holy and close to God. He is still being rejected by people today. The very stone that was sent to lead, guide, and deliver became a stumbling block when they rejected him. The Pharisees, just as people still do today, chose to disobey and go their own way, leaving the safety and security of the only stability there ever will be in this life and the life hereafter. Now, Peter reminds the people that they are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation. They are God's special possession. They have these glorious names so they may declare the praises of him who called them out of darkness and into his wonderful life. Now in verse 10, Peter writes, "Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Peter's excitement oozes from these words. Followers of Jesus become a part of the chosen generation. No longer are the Jews God's only chosen people, but we are adopted into the family, becoming blood relations of spiritual Israel. We become royalty, sons and daughters of the King. Remaining holy takes work, and it's not for the feeble-minded or the faint of heart. Satan will want to trip us up any chance he gets. Troubles and trials will come our way. However, we must strive to follow Jesus, allowing him to be our cornerstone, guiding us to stay on the straight and narrow. Now, in conclusion, the question of identity is at the center of the text that we read. In the face of persecution and suffering, the believers to whom Peter wrote seem to have had their doubts. In our contemporary world, the issue of our identity as Christians is just as important. Our world bombards us with endless identity options. These options in and of themselves range from the harmless to the sinful. But what all of these have in common is that they must give way before our allegiance to Jesus. Christians serve King Jesus as members of royalty. Do we act like royalty in the best sense of the word? Do we treat fellow Christians as if they are princes and princesses alongside us? Most of all, do we honor Jesus in all we do as his obedient servants? May we honor that role and beyond as we work toward the unity of believers as the holy royal nation of King Jesus.